Hello and welcome. In this video I'm going to show you how to create embellishments using silver metal clay. Now whether you work in metal clay or sheet silver or whatever material you already use, you can create embellishments in metal clay and add it to your piece. So it's a really a bonus of working in this material. So down here you can see some examples of little embellishments that I've created. I'm going to show you how I make a few of them today. So I've got some little moulds, I've got flowers, some little circles. These haven't been refined yet, so obviously they can be sanded and polished and added to your pieces, but they are really nice, useful elements to have, and I often make up a stack of them and kind of have them around. So I'm going to show you how I make those. And this is another example. I really like these, using these little die molds. They're used in silversmithing, but they're also very useful for metal clay because they're a lot more detailed than a lot of the molds that we get in the metal clay pieces. So this piece, for example, you can see that I've done in the dry clay, and then I've also got it in the silver as well. So that's a nice example, and that could be added to a ring, it could be soldered onto a ring, it could be soldered onto a flat sheet of pendant, combined with stone settings and all sorts of things. And I've got another big one there. So they're a little bit more expensive, these ones, but if you find a design you really like that you want to use for, say, a whole collection, then that's a really nice way to add detail to your piece and your work. So some other ways that I create embellishments are using mini cookie cutters. So you can find small ones. They're a little bit trickier to find lots of small ones. So here I've got a square and I've got a heart. They were actually taken from a set that had a whole range of different sizes of the same one. So they're the smallest ones of those sets. So if you've got those sets at home, you'll be able to see those. And then I love these tube cutters. They're by Joy Funnel. They're called tubey cutters. And they come in actually all different sizes, and they go down to really tiny. So she's made those specifically for metal clayers, and I think they're very handy for making embellishments. They're also very handy for making balls if you want to make your metal clay balls all the same size. I'll show you how to do that with these in a little bit as well. This sheet is really useful for making embellishments. It's actually used for technical drawing. So you can see it's got squares in, it's got teardrop shapes, it's got triangles all the way through to rectangles. So we use the needle tool to actually cut out the shapes. And there are all manner of technical drawing templates like this that you can find on jewellery websites, jewellery supply websites. So they're really useful for creating our embellishments as well. We obviously have our moulds, so moulds are great for creating embellishments. Some of the embellishments I've created already are from here. I use the smaller moulds for this, so obviously the moulds are great for creating pieces, but creating little flowers or little leaves, whatever it is you have on your moulds that you buy, you can buy these from metal clay supply stores. And sometimes Sugarcraft as well, they have those. Then I've got some texture mats for some of the pieces we're going to be creating. This is a stamp, so I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it's they come in all different shapes, but this is a kind of almost like a sun stamp. So that stamped onto a circle would be a nice embellishment to go around a piece or something that I'm creating. And they come in different shapes and sizes. I've got my sanding paper for refining my pieces. Over here I've got a little tub, and it's full of little balls of metal clay. So I'll show you how to make the balls. I mean, it's fairly simple, but I do lots of different sizes. So you can do tiny ones, you can do larger ones, and they're really nice for soldering on to pieces if you want to have silver balls soldered on, or you can attach them at the dry stage in your metal clay work as well. Then I've got some metal clay I'm going to be working with, needle tool, paintbrush, just my various bits and pieces. So we'll get on and I'll show you just a few little techniques for how I make these embellishments so you can have a play and make your own at home. Great, so I'm going to start by creating some little pieces out of this mould. So I'm just going to add a bit of badger balm, or if you don't have badger balm you can use a little bit of olive oil into these little flowery ones. I'm just going to take a little bit of clay. And I try and guesstimate how much clay I'm going to need for each one. The more you do them, you get kind of closer to knowing your quantities. Just going to roll it into a little ball and pop it in. Same on the other side for a little one. Try and give them a flat back. This one's actually got a little bit too much clay, so I'm just going to pop it out and do it again. You can use a tissue blade. If you've got a tissue blade, you can just go across the top. But I like to try and get it as accurate as possible, just by hand. And make sure my clay is wrapped up in between making. And just simply pop those out onto a card by flexing. You can also leave them to dry on the piece if you prefer. But I'm always curious. I like to see what they look like, make sure I'm happy with them before I commit. Great. So there are a couple of embellishments, and for those I could add them to rings, I could add them to pendant, earrings, cufflinks, whatever I'm making. So I'm just going to pop those over here to dry. And I'll show you how to make another piece. So that's moulds, fairly straightforward. I like to create quite a lot of flat texture pieces. So I'm going to start with 5 cards on each side. I've got 4 at the moment. I'm just going to add 1 more to each side. And if you've not used metal clay before, the cards are used for making sure that the thickness is consistent when I'm rolling out my clay. So I've got 5 cards on each side. I'm just going to add some badger balm to my roller and to the bottom of my mat. And I'm going to roll out a bit of clay. Don't like to touch the clay too much because I don't want to dry it out with my fingers, so just place it on. Take a card off each side. Then I'm just going to add some badger balm to this texture tile I'm going to work with. And place that over my clay. Try and look at a piece that looks nice. And give it a roll. Lovely, so you can see I've got a really nice texture in there, and I can use this to cut out all types of embellishments. So I can cut out a square one using my square cutter, and I just dip it in the badger balm first to try and avoid it sticking. It probably still will, which it has. They often do stick. Don't worry, you can just use a needle tool, just very, very gently, because I don't want a big poke mark, just in the corners. Every time I've made a piece, I just pop it on a card, then it's really easy to put into the hot plate. And of course I could do a heart shape, I can do a circle, so again I'm just going to grease it. Sometimes with these slightly larger ones, it's better to use the blunt end of the tool to just gently push it out. The next thing I like to show you is rolling balls. So obviously you can just roll balls naturally, but with your fingers. But if you want them to be all the same size, then it's a good idea to use a cookie cutter to measure it out. So I'm going to cut out 1, 2 of these. I'm just going to put the excess clay away for now. And I like to keep my clay wrapped up in cling film. I'll often also, if I'm working for a while, I'll wrap a soft, moist baby wipe around it to keep it nice and soft. So for these, I could just leave them like that and that could be an embellishment, but I'm gonna actually just use them to make a ball. So just gonna roll it out on the palm of my hand. And then I should have two balls that are the same size. So they're nice for little embellishments. When they're dry, I can give them a bit of a sand if there's any cracks or lines. Then for creating really small balls, really tiny ones, I just grab the tiniest amount of clay that I can. So I've just got a tiny pinch in my finger and run it round. And hopefully you can see that there's a really tiny kind of ball there. Now these are useful for just adding as little embellishments. You know, if I have 4 or 5 of these and I want to add them to a piece, it can add some really nice details. So just pinch really tiny amount at a time, roll it round. And I'll sit and I'll do, you know, 20 of these or 30 of these, and then I'll just have a little tub of them, all different sizes, so that when I come to make my projects, they're all nice and dry and ready to use, and I can add them to my designs. Great. There's one more adding embellishments technique which I wanted to show you, which is using these die stamps. So I'm just going to grease it nicely with my Badger Balm. And it's very similar to a mould. The only difference is I can't push these out. So you just have to wait for them to dry and hope they look gorgeous, which they will do, I'm sure. So again, I try and guesstimate how much clay I'm going to need. Roll it into a ball and push down. And then I'm just going to use my finger to push to the edges. I do spend a fair amount of time cleaning up the backs, so I'm not too worried about that. It doesn't take long to sand the back afterwards. And when it comes out, it's going to look a little like that, and it will finish up like that. So there we go. There's a bunch of different ways to add different shapes and embellishments to your clay. Use your moulds. We didn't have a go at using these, but it's essentially just using the needle tool to go round and cut out a shape. So when you've rolled out your clay, that's a really nice way to do it as well. Have a look around for some mini cookie cutters, like this little selection I've got. You might be able to find some more exciting ones as well. And just have an afternoon of making some embellishments and sanding them, getting them ready to use on your clay. If you want to fire them to sterling silver, if you work in sterling, then make sure you fire them, torch fire them, and then solder them on. And if you're going to add them to your metal clay, you can add them on in the dry stage by adding a bit of syringe and paste. So best of luck with making your pieces. Have a play, let us know how you get on. And if you'd like to learn more in-depth courses in metal clay and other techniques, come and check out the website over at jewellersacademy.com. We'd love to see you there. All right, bye for now.